everyone, and welcome to another great session of the Content Marketing Institute's special digital day, all about content operations excellence. I'm Stephanie Stahl, General Manager for CMI, and I'm so happy to have you all here. If you missed any of the previous sessions, no worries. They will be available on demand, and we can make sure you get a link to that in about 24 hours or so. Before we get started with this session on rightsizing for the perfect dam, please take a quick look at this slide. It's just a few logistics that will help make the next 30 minutes go a little more smoothly for you. Basically, you don't need to do anything. You can sit back and just watch the slides and listen to the presenters. But if you'd like to ask a question at any time, please do. We love questions. Just use the Q&A box, put your question there, hit submit. You can use that same space to interact with us however you'd like. If you just want to make a comment or share a story of your own with us, let us know where you're dialing in from today, whatever. That's there for you to communicate with us. Like I said, the slides will advance automatically. You don't really need to do anything. We have a resources tab there for you. If you'd like to download a copy of the slides, go there. There are some other resources there that are great bits of education that you might want as well. And of course, we would also love for you to get involved in the conversation on social media if you'd like. If you want to share what you're learning on Twitter, please use hashtag CMWorld. Our community manager is there, and she's live tweeting from this session as well. So join her, please. All right. So our speakers today, we've got Ken Zordani. He is VP at Avyre. Hey, Ken. How are you?
Hey, how are you? Doing well.
Good to see you. And we've got Josh Van Dyke, who is VP of North American Sales at Censhare. Hello, Josh. Welcome.
Hey. Happy to be here from LA.
Awesome. We've got LA and Phoenix in the house, right?
That's right.
Yes. Great weather all around.
Indeed. All right. Well, I'll turn it over to you guys, and I will catch up with you at the end for some Q&A from the audience.
Fantastic. Well, let's rock and roll. Let's dive in. So we're talking a bit about right-sizing your dam today. Obviously, there's a lot of different dam solutions out there in the market, so finding the one that's the perfect fit for your organization. We'd love to find out a little bit more about who's on this webinar today. And if you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about where you're at in terms of your maturity level with your dam. Does your organization have kind of no real dam in place at all? Everything's everywhere. Do you have a basic repository like a Google Drive or a Dropbox? Do you have a light dam solution? In other words, what we would call a point solution that is just solely a dam? Or do you have a more of an enterprise, full-scale platform that allows you to go ahead and expand beyond dam, maybe into print or PIM or campaign management? So we'll love to see who's on this, and we can kind of get an idea of the different types of attendees, and we can speak more to you directly, and we can kind of go from there. I see some answers coming in here, which is great. And we know not everybody has a dam. Maybe not everybody has a dam that they like, if they do have a dam. So this is great to try and go in here. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we got so far. All right, so we got about 37%, and this is real time now that it has kind of just nothing. Everything's everywhere. So this is going to be highly relevant. Also, maybe another 20% that don't really have a real dam solution, just kind of a repository. We've got about 30% that has a light point solution, and we have about 10% that have something more full scale. I'm super excited to see these numbers because I think the content that we have here for you today is really going to be applicable. And in terms of how does that align with the greater organizations out there, a poll that was done by the Content Marketing Institute shows that about 41% of companies have a dam. And this is a technology and a marketplace that's growing really rapidly over the next decade. So let's dive in. A little bit of an agenda here. So dam is a solution. Why have a dam? We'll cover that, right? Signs of outgrowth. So maybe you have a light dam and you're starting to mature out of that. Some common mistakes made in this procurement process and deployment process. What are some of those that you want to make sure you definitely avoid? And then, getting started strategically and really talking about what does that mean to get started strategically. And then we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. Okay. So for those of you who have kind of nothing in place, as well as, what I would consider not a real DAM solution, just like a Dropbox or a Google Drive, which was, about 60% of the audience, why invest in something like a digital asset management system? Well, here's some of the key reasons. Of course, the first two are, I think, the most obvious, but organizing all those files and assets in a central location and making sure that they're really easy to find. A simple search can find them. Maybe, using a faceted search, a few filters, and boom, you have the thing that you want. This is the number one thing that we hear from people who don't have a DAM in place. They go, gosh, we just can't find things, or it takes a really long time to find things, or people are emailing me from all sorts of departments, emailing marketing, trying to find something, right? Also, making sure that you have some automations so that you can move things through a process quicker. You might not just have finalized assets in this system. You might have some work in progress assets that haven't been fully approved, in automating that approval process. Making sure that the right people are seeing the right assets, right? So permission sets are massive, and a lot of lightweight solutions basically have 3 permission sets. Ken will talk about that a little bit later. But making sure that the people that are seeing the assets are allowed to and able to see those assets. Making sure you have appropriate metadata that is assigned by the different groups, who can assign metadata, who can only read it. And then making sure you avoid legal and financial risk. A lot of people forget about this one in the fluster of not finding assets, but finding the right asset with maybe the right legal disclaimer on it, or the right contract, not the last version, but the most current version. Or if there's an image that you bought, and how long do you have the rights to use that image? All those things are really important. So, thinking a little bit about outgrowing your DAM. Okay, so there's these pain points, and Ken, I'm going to let you dive into this because you see this a lot. I'm so happy to have Ken on the call today because he works with so many different companies that are coming to them and say, hey, we're in year 2 of a 3-year agreement with this DAM, and we're starting to outgrow it, and we need to make sure that we get a new one in place that meets our needs before we need to go into this 3rd year. And can you help us? And that's what you really specialize in. So why don't you talk a little bit about those pain points?
Yeah, Josh, in most cases, clients look to take that pragmatic approach of, I just want a central repository to kind of store and manage my assets. But, in everyone's life cycle, and every company will mature a little bit differently and a little bit faster than others. When you start to look at permission sets or your creative life cycle around workflows and versioning, multi-page PDFs if you're in publishing or just have a lot of documents, that digital asset management marriage to that, I would say, a point solution DAM or a lightweight departmental system could come to an end fairly quickly. In most cases, that's roughly 80% of clients will go through that 2 to 3 year marriage to the next enterprise platform pretty soon. So the big thing is how do you identify what that risk is, what your maturity life cycle is going to be, and what is the best vendor for you? And that's kind of what we do day in, day out, is to kind of help clients find out what that path is and mitigate any risk, or, we'll talk about this a little bit later, what those opportunity costs are. And at times they could be substantial. So.
Fantastic. So, in terms of those opportunity costs and what that actually costs, there is a cost to maturing out of your DAM. So in that year 2, and you're saying, gosh, I got to get out of this. We need something bigger, better, more robust. It isn't just your effort, but there's some hard costs and some soft costs that an organization has. So I have a little chart here. And so you can see like additional procurement. So some of you on the line would be part of that procurement process, doing vendor evaluations, helping write maybe an RFP or user stories, sitting through demos. That takes a lot of your time and other people on your team's time. There's change management issues, right? So as you go ahead and roll out a new system, converting people, saying you're going to do it slightly different. There's legal costs. Those might be an internal cost, but you might have an outsourced legal team that you're paying to review these contracts of whatever vendor you select. There's going to be migration costs, whether those migration costs are internal via your IT or external, being an implementer doing the migration for you, migrating all those assets from one system to another. There's integration. So you might want to integrate with an ERP or a Salesforce or anything like that. Redoing those. There's training costs. You've got to actually do training of all your staff on the new system. And then you got to re-implement a new system, right? So that's probably the biggest cost, right, on this one as well. And then, another soft cost is this user adoption. Did you get buy-in after training on all the change management issues? And you probably have some overlapping license costs or support costs by about 6 months. Those are costs that actually some of them have a soft figure and some of them have a real dollar amount. We actually went through some of these, and the hard dollar amounts are probably somewhere in between 75 and 200,000, right? So when you think about, I'm gonna get this tiny little point solution that's gonna solve this one little problem, and it's a little less expensive. I'm gonna save $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month. In the end, after 2 or 3 years, you actually didn't save any money. You actually spent more money because you had to re-procure something, right? So there's a real risk in this. Ken, did you want to add to that?
You could even almost say that, when these costs come down, when people are making decisions around software purchases, it has led to potentially a job change for those that kind of champion that solution in there. Because the project failed and the transition occurred and it was really expensive.
Yeah.
So, how do you assess? Go ahead.
Yeah. How do you assess those risks, right? And, I'll tell you, every time someone gets on a demo, I hear this from clients, everything looks so sharp and snappy, and every vendor says they're really enterprise and they can handle it. But Ken, you've been with those clients that have shown you a system, that's got the spinny ball, right? So tell us a little bit more about real world experiences you have with some of your clients around kind of assessing those risks.
Yeah, I would imagine just even after a few slides, we're probably getting those virtual head nods by some that have gone through these transitions, the pain of the user adoption and the procurement process, trying to cut through the sales demos to find the solution that best fits them. But, it comes down to, there's 6 points here, but we've all seen the massive pages of RFP and RFI spreadsheets of, does your system do this? Does it do that? But how does that translate back to the business? Ultimately, when you cut it down, you can look at like these 6 keys, architecture and scalability. Can that system scale vertically and horizontally? In terms of when you add a new business unit, how hard is that? Is there a cost impact to it? Is there budget allocated to that? How is there latency when you're downloading images from an APAC managed service environment from a European client and you're in the US? Can you move that large file relatively quickly? Can you upload it? Does you get that spinning beach ball for 10 or 15 minutes until that large PNG file is actually loaded into the system to where you can react and edit and interact or collaborate with your colleagues? Security and permission models. If there's rights or licensing around a model image, do you want grant that access to anyone within the company to be able to download and use it? Those are the nuances of what we call departmental systems to enterprise systems. They can really go down to the granular level of metadata permission models on certain assets. Interoperability. Everyone talks about integrations, but it's also automation. And when you think of automation, we think of there's so much data within an ecosystem, whether it's coming from e-commerce, ERP, social media around content, how you build content, how do you know what content is being consumed and warmly received, and the comments back on that. No one likes to fill in metadata, so how do you plug your DAM into your ecosystem to help generate better search and distribution of that. Your metadata schema, there's always, everyone says, yes, we support robust metadata schemas. Can they go down to subfolders and subfolders to figure out what's best for your organization? How is that being adopted today? Support and resolution times. In dealing with so many different DAM vendors over the last 2 decades, if you don't maybe spend enough with them, they won't respond to your tickets or your development roadmap, what's critical for your company. So, the relationship with a vendor, with a strategic partner, as well as internal resources is always critical. And then understanding the limits on the APIs. If you push 10,000 images in an hour, will that vendor throttle you back and not allow that? So there's generally 5 questions that we can always help a client with. Say, ask these vendors these questions, and maybe you'll weed them out as a viable candidate. So happy to kind of have those conversations should you be looking for your next marriage to digital asset management or looking for your first one. So.
Yeah, I mean, years ago when I got started in this, we were having a conversation. I said, hey, everybody says they're enterprise. Do you have like a list of questions that you ask in order to determine that? And you sent me some. I was wondering, could you share those if people want to email you that are on this call? Could you share those with them if they wanted?
100%. We live and breathe and die DAM with clients. Are agnostic. We just love to do best practices, see people succeed. When technology is there, but it's understanding the people, process, and culture of each organization and how that technology can really accelerate and help their company grow. That's what we're there for as a services provider. Perfect.
That's awesome. So, we've talked about this a bit, Ken, but these kind of common mistakes we see in this DAM selection and kind of business operations, right? Having this North Star vision, taking a tactical versus strategic approach, and then relying on governance rules. So let's dive into this a little bit because we see this over and over again. We want to make sure the people on this call don't make those mistakes. So first off, having that North Star vision, or sometimes it's a lack of a North Star vision, right? Oftentimes what we see is this kind of ecosystem versus point solution approach, right? Solving the needs just today by finding this little point solution, or using an ecosystem approach or a platform approach where you can say, yes, I can solve these needs today, but I can have a larger vision of how I want this to tie into our organization and revolutionize our organization. And some ideas around that North Star approach, for those of you taking notes at home, is what kind of additional departments might want to use this? Internal or potentially external? Do you have external users from different agencies or whatnot that might be loading assets in assigning metadata and whatnot, right? So starting to think a little bit bigger outside of the initial scope. What other modules might you need in the future, or whether that be product information modules or print production modules or campaign management or translations, thinking a little bit bigger around that. Of course, recognizing manual processes. So what manual processes do you have today in that user journey that you could start to eliminate with some automation, right? What systems might you be able to replace? Maybe you have a lot of fragmented, siloed systems that, maybe you start with a nice DAM solution, but eventually, because they have other modules, you can start to replace some of these other solutions and have everything live in one spot, right? So really having a North Star vision and writing that out, and what does that look like, and who would be involved, who could help you promote that North Star vision. Of course, you want to start, with solving the needs you have today, but taking that vision as well. So, we often see the second mistake of this tactical versus strategic problem, right? Like, I need to solve this pesky business problem, and it's very reactionary. Ken, you hear that a lot, I'm sure. How do you work with clients on that?
Absolutely. It's a conversation weekly with customers that, the creative department or marketing department has problems around workflow processes and approvals to accelerate a campaign. And they just want to go out and buy something so they can have people come into the system hit approve, and then it moves off and gets distributed, right? So we think that more as a tactical point solution that's going to solve a very small problem for a very small user group. When holistically, if we look at how people currently work today, but how they want to work later, is bringing that vision and more of a strategic technology purchase into that long game kind of a suite of things, right? How do we bring in and align leadership? What goals do they have for the company that you can understand? Yes, we may need a pragmatic approach to just getting a central repository, but what else can we do to help benefit the company? Understanding those goals and visions, timelines, budgets are all very critical. And Josh, you alluded to in a few slides ago, now who's going to be involved in this? Who are our champions? Right. Who are our early adopters, and maybe those late term people that we need to kind of bring in? How can we align all those? Just understand who they are. That's really that kind of secret sauce of the people, process, and culture. And then how does technology enable them to do what they do better? The tactical for strategic, if you look at a point solution, it's only going to solve a small problem. But if you look at more of an enterprise solution that has a modular framework to it, you can start off with that central repository, but then you build in those additional modules as you start to mature, gain additional budget, build out your business requirements, and then you start to achieve those swift and measurable results that you can bring back to your C-suite or leadership saying, hey, we've invested this, and this is the return we got onto that. So it's always about understanding your company, understanding that vision of where you want to go, and then how does technology enable that? But most importantly, it's your people and process first. So
right on. Yeah, that's fantastic. So let's dive into this third one: relying on governance rules.
Governance, you could say that is the question of all questions. How much is needed? What's the perfect blend? How do you approach it? Are you in a very risk-adverse vertical like pharma or FinServe? Or are you as a client in a very high-paced, fast, marketing agency that's working to creative copy to send to your clients for marketing campaigns? So you generally hear the statements around, what do you mean I can't use this asset when you're in a DAM? Or why do I have to fill in so much metadata? I have better things to do. Well, if you have proper governance and a framework to help your employees and enable them to do their day-to-day business, that's kind of I would say, and I go back to the secret sauce, what is too much and what is too little to make sure that your digital asset management or your just platform in general doesn't become a big trash can of content and isn't replaced in 2 to 3 years along with all that cost and resources that have been allocated to it. But just striking that perfect balance of, alignment, change management, and governance to keep things in line, so you're not going to have that expensive course correction later. Governance is a tricky thing. It's different for every customer and vertical, and that's kind of where that strategic partner, if you have one, that is fantastic if they can help you with this. If you don't, it's always best to invest a little bit to know how the impact of a good governance framework will help with your digital asset management program.
Right on. So, really the goal that, we see is starting to look for more of this holistic omni-channel delivery. And what we're trying to, convey with the people on this call is how do you move from the idea of DAM as a repository versus DAM as delivery, right? So I think for those of you who are on the call who initially, are going, well, we have everything everywhere, just having everything in one spot. Yeah, of course, definitely. We definitely want to have a pragmatic approach, get everything in one spot, have a good repository, you can find things quickly, easy, there's metadata, there's governance around it, right? But also shifting that thinking and outside of just having the repository, how do you create those assets as deliverable assets that actually improve, sales, that improve your marketing output, things of that nature, right? So, how do you work today, but how do you want to work? How do you want to improve, right? And how can we tie some of these things in there, right? Definitely, having a modular approach, maybe, having just the dam initially, get that stood up, find the assets, whatnot, have permission sets around them. But then eventually you're going to want to have things like workflow and approval processes built into there. That's part of delivery, right? Moving something forward and then pushing it out into the world, right? So how do you automate some of that process? How do you see where all of those assets are and have that 360-degree view of where are your assets, where have they been used, how have they been used, who approved them, who created them, right? You may have product information management that you want to tie in, where you have relationships, you have versioning, you have bundling, you have rights. You want to have a data model that's flexible and see how the products are related to the different assets. Making sure that those things can tie in as well, right? Editing and print production, working strategically and making sure that you have you have things working with your editors, maybe in InDesign. Maybe there's copywriters you're working with all in real time to be able to publish something, right? And push that out into a catalog, pushing things out maybe into social media posts, right? So thinking about some of those different publications that you're using, what do you need to tie into to make sure all the information within your dam is current? What's happening within the dam to be able to push information out to whatever channel is important to you, whether that's your mobile app, your website, your print publication, your social, whatever it might be. So thinking not just as a repository, but as delivery, right? So how do you get the most out of the dam? Ken, this is something I think you're really passionate about. So why don't you hop onto that one?
Yeah. When we look at it, there's so many vendors out there. Do you slowly adopt functionality to your culture and your user base? So maybe taking that, as Josh and I have said, that pragmatic approach, we just need to make sure that we don't have multiple silos. Everyone has social media platforms, content management systems, DAMs, ERPs. There's so many different systems where content is stored. Let's just bring that into one system to where we can manage it and have that 360-degree view, and then slowly build out, as Josh said, adding PIM functionality or, campaign management to that platform. So your team has one dynamic user interface. They can collaborate how they want to, and you can really accelerate that what we say is the media supply chain, from content creation to distribution to consumption, and then ultimately, when's the end of life for that asset? We need to track and see, that value of that content throughout that life cycle. Hundreds of hours could have been spent creating that and people consuming it. Let's bring that back into the ecosystem so we know what the process is and be able to refine it and make it better for our companies. And then end of the day, it's, onboarding. You have a lot of users, whether, there's 15 people in the company upwards to, large global companies that have hundreds of thousands of content creators and contributors in many countries. Have an onboarding plan for them that is tailored, that's customized in their language, so you get user adoption, and everyone is contributing to that platform, both from a content perspective, but enriching with metadata. The other thing is circle back and learn from your team. Be open to change. Understand how to manage that change effectively with a governance framework, but do it early and often. And there's different levels. Receive feedback from your C-suite of funding and your budget plan and development roadmap for your DAM program, as well as your day-to-day creatives. If things aren't working, how do we pivot? What does that mean to our program and our North Star vision? And then continually improve the system. Don't set it and forget it. We want to make sure that we're upgrading the system. We have interoperability and critical integrations that we can drive automation with data and pushing assets as quickly as we can, so we can kind of build out that platform without having a lot of point solutions if it's needed. Just kind of be that DAM steward. So I think that's kind of a great goal to have for four. But everyone has their own story, and always happy to help discuss what that is and what a path forward would be.
Yeah, and I love that. And, I've seen a lot of, other vendors. I know Censhare's done this, but other vendors have done it too, where they've created kind of like a quick start DAM, right? Something really simple that, is able to get stood up really quickly. For those, smaller companies that maybe are getting started for the first time. They still want to have something they can grow into, but they don't have that enterprise budget yet, right? So, there are platforms out there that have done that, where they've created something that's easy to stand up and much less expensive, but then still, accommodates all of these things that you're talking about, where you can gather that feedback and see what's needed and see where we can grow, right? So, I know there was a lot there. We've covered a lot of ground there. I'm sure there's some questions that are bound to come in. But we're also happy to have conversations one-on-one with people as well. We have our contact details here. We'd love to have a virtual coffee with people as we're still in a pandemic. So anybody that'd like to reach out to us, we'll send you a Starbucks gift card, and we can have coffee together over Zoom and kind of discuss where you're at. What do you see for your organization? What's important to your organization? How do you see things changing and growing over time with your enterprise? So I'd love to entertain those conversations with you. And I think we're going to open it up to Q&A now.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Josh and Ken. That was fantastic. Very nice offer for the cup of coffee as well. I have a few comments in our box here about the copy of the questions to ask that you all mentioned. Lots of people are looking for that. So if you are, I see Chelsea, you said you love a copy of that. Reach out directly to Ken at that email, and happy to send it to you or anybody else. All right, let's see. We've got some good questions here from the audience. In terms of DAM specific metrics, what would be typical KPIs or measures that one would want to go after?
Josh, did you want to handle that, or you want me to take it?
Yeah, Ken, go for that first, and I'll add on.
Sure. Depending on KPIs, when you look at your media supply chain, one could be, if you're going for, budget for a DAM, what's your current life cycle around content creation to approval? When most people first install a DAM, that could be days to weeks. And if you're able to cut that cycle down by a few days or a couple weeks, that's a massive operational lift that would spark any chief marketing officer's ears to saying, hey, we can now create, instead of 50 campaigns in a given year, now we can do 60 or 65 that drives brand awareness as well as conversions if it's an e-com, CPG, or retail company based on that campaign. So, KPIs are vastly different for each vertical. Love to hear more about, what that may be for your particular situation. A great opportunity to have a virtual coffee in 10, 15 minutes and see how we can help you.
Perfect.
Okay. Let's see. Great question here from Kate, and you did touch on this a little bit. But how can you best assess scalability of a DAM vendor? She says, I would assume one way is to talk with existing customers that have upgraded, but are there other watch points she'd like to know?
Yeah, I mean, this is great because it is tough. Like we said earlier, kind of everybody says we're enterprise. Everybody says we're scalable. There has been a lot of new players to the market in the last 5 years that are smaller and maybe solve a solution, but maybe you can't scale out. Like I said, Ken has a great list of questions. I think that's good. Ken, maybe you want to touch on a couple of those. I know we don't have a ton of time.
Yeah, with scalability, you can always look at, the relational database versus a graph database. When you see from that experience, graph database is definitely going to be kind of a future proof or a future state for digital asset management with those vendors that have that capability, as well as can they break apart their search database? So if you have lots of people doing general queries to the system, you can scale that when there's high peak processes that are happening, or conversion databases. So if you need to do a conversion of 1,000 assets really quick from PNG to JPEG, can you escalate that if there's a priority piece? Or it's always about peak times. You'd never want to see that spinning ball, because time is money, especially for creative life cycles. Those are just some little tidbits there. Love to know more, Kate, about vendors that you're looking at and how we can definitely help you. And those are just some, I say, high-level technical suggestions. So hopefully you find that helpful.
Excellent. Let's see, Josh, let me throw this one to you. Bill wants to know, how do you sell the ROI to the C-suite decision makers?
Yeah, I saw that one. I thought that was a great question. A lot of people like to talk in terms of efficiency, but really you need to put that in terms of dollars, right? C-suite doesn't care that you saved some time. They want to care. They want to care that you either save dollars or produce more dollars, right? So, is there other systems that you could eliminate, right? Is there? Have you done a survey of how long does it take to find assets? And how much time is spent doing that by a bunch of different people within the organization, right? And then what is the average maybe salary, and then multiplying that time and actually showing that. How, not just the efficiency of I can create this faster, but I can create more things, right? And how does that relate to driving revenue or driving production, right? So not just saving time, but producing more, right? Those are all things that are, I think, really valuable. Talk in terms of dollars, not time. You can always translate the time back into dollars, right? And production. Ken, anything else there?
Yeah, and Josh, you could look at reuse. There's a lot of global companies, or even smaller companies. They pay a lot of money to create content, and then you see all the kind of spoof videos that they're looking for one single image and they can't find it, so they spend time to recreate it. Right. There's a large retail restaurant chain that had spent $2 to $3 million just on the logos on their cash registers or kiosks because everyone was recreating those logos. So, each individual company has their own challenges. ROI always goes back to dollars, because any C-suite is going to yawn when they hear about operational efficiencies.
Yeah.
All right. So you've got the C-suite on board. They're convinced. You get the DAM. You get moving. Now Bill wants to know, how do you deal with users who won't get on board, and those who might resort back to old habits and doing things the old way? How do you convince all of your, marketing professionals across the organization to use the DAM?
Yeah, I think
Josh, I'll take this one. Okay. As a services company with Avyre, we see this often, and you kind of see the bell curve that happens. You have your early adopters, you have your late adopters, and your laggards. In most cases, you generally want to focus on your early adopters, because those are really going to be your champions. The innovative side, they're always in from the start. It goes back to change management. With so many technology purchases happening within a company, they come in and go out because they take more of a tactical approach. It goes back to understanding your culture at the company, that change management, and really driving the why for that person or that group. What is going to make their life easier? And it's not, hey, there's a piece of technology, it's going to help you do your job faster. But what's important to them as a person? If you can find out what that is, and it does take some discovery and group meetings to figure out the change management piece, that's critical. Some people, some companies never get down to that level, and they have poor user adoption, even though they purchased a really awesome piece of technology. Yeah, it's the socialization of it. So, great question.
Yeah, oftentimes it comes down to listening, right? Listening, and then where can I help improve your life? And then now you can actually, now they've gotten their buy-in on that, show them how it actually works within the software.
Fantastic. Okay. We're out of time. Folks, if we didn't get your question answered, we will share them with Ken and Josh and make sure we do get your questions answered. Thank you for so many great ones from the audience. And Josh and Ken, thank you for this fantastic discussion. So many great takeaways, so many notes to be taken today. Really appreciate it. And thank you to Censhare for making this possible. We hope you all can join us for the next session. We've got one more to go today. It will start, I think, let's see, we're going to start at 2:15 Eastern time. We're going to talk about the 5 steps to connect digital content. Our very own Robert Rose is going to be speaking on that, along with Kathy McKnight. We'll see you there. Thank you, guys. Have a great afternoon.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks.